Welcome back, and hopefully you're ready for part 2 of our 1-point perspective drawings. So where we left off was that we had created an interior space, or the illusion of depth within an interior space, with creating a back wall and then using having 2 side walls, a floor, and a ceiling. And so now we're going to add to this room. We're going to draw some things onto the room. So I'm going to go ahead and erase my labels so that those aren't there anymore. If you remember, we're only going to use 3 types of lines to draw in perspective. Horizontal lines. Those are lines that are completely horizontal to our top and bottom of our page. Vertical lines. Those are lines that are completely vertical to the sides of our page. And then last, we're going to be using orthogonal lines, and those recede to the vanishing point. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and start with our room, and we'll start with a door. You're going to build off of a lot of what you already know from the like drawing simple and complex shapes in space using 1-point perspective. That was what you did before spring break, where we did some practice. And so what we're going to do with our door, I'm going to put the door on this wall over here, and I'm first going to determine the height of the door so that I have something to connect the orthogonal lines to. Anything that is drawn on the walls, the floor, or the ceiling is going to be drawn in perspective. So it will take orthogonal lines to draw it in perspective. So I'm going to start out here with a vertical. Again, I want it to be parallel to the sides of my page. So I'm kind of looking at the sides of my page, and I'm going to draw the height of my door. Now, when something is closer to me in space, as Captain Mark told us, it is going to have, when we draw something closer in space, then that means that it is going to be bigger. And so I want my doorway to appear bigger here, and I'm going to think about like what it would actually be in space by comparison to the height of the ceiling. These lines are telling me that the wall is separated from the ceiling, the wall is separated from the floor. That's what these lines were that we drew originally. So this line, I know it already connects back to the vanishing point. I mean, this one I don't need to worry about because I've already drawn it to connect to the vanishing point. But now I need the top of the door to connect to the vanishing point. So I'm going to place my ruler along the vanishing point, and now I am going to attach it to the top of the line that I drew, which is going to be the doorway. So I really didn't need to draw it all the way here. I just needed to use it to get the idea for like the angle for the top of the door. So now that I have the top of the door and the bottom of the door drawn, I'm just erasing that line to show the thickness of the door, how thick I want that, door to be in the room. And now I'm going to draw another vertical down to where the floor begins, right? So I'm going to draw a vertical line. It should be parallel to the edge of the page and any other verticals that I've drawn. I can even start with my ruler here and just slide it straight over if I want to do that to make sure that I keep with that same angle. And then I'm drawing my door to where it meets the floor. This is because this door can now either have depth to it so that it leads into another room, and also because you wouldn't draw the door actually cutting into the floor. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. So now that I have the door, like very basic, just opening where it's placed, drawn, now I'm going to show the depth. And so I'm going to use my horizontal lines, and I'm going to do a small horizontal line at the bottom of this line that I've drawn, and then also at the top of that line that I drew. And as wide as I draw them, that's going to be the thickness of the doorway. So I'm going to go ahead, now that I've drawn those 2 lines, I'm going to draw another vertical line that is parallel to this one that I've already drawn. So let me put my ruler on this side. And in fact, I could just start here and slide straight over again to make sure that I keep with that angle. And I'm going to connect the 2. This should look really familiar at this point. You would have been used to starting out with a shape and then connecting it to the vanishing point. So now that I've drawn the depth of the room, I need to figure out what this line would be right here. Now, I don't really need it for the floor, because honestly, I could just erase that line right there. And look, now I have a passageway into another room. But I do need to draw the depth or the thickness of the doorway along the top plane of the door frame. And so I'm going to place my ruler along the with the vanishing point, And then I'm going to align it, kind of pivot it around and align it with that top right corner of the thickness of my doorway. And then draw a line to where it ends. So you see, now I have kind of like a passageway or a doorway. If I had wanted to, I could have made it a closed door, but regardless, either way, you can now see the depth here in the door. I could also have drawn the thickness a little bit less and made a closed door, but so that you can still see the thickness of the doorway. Any of this can be adjusted. This is a very basic doorway that I've created for this room. So right now the door is open. The door could have been open to the other room, or it's just creating more dimension as I move through the space. So now that I have this doorway created, we're gonna draw a couch. And when we draw furniture in space, we start out with very simple shapes, very simple like skeleton shapes. And we kind of talked about that with our drawing in general. So the other thing that I need to keep in mind is wherever I draw my couch, like I think I'm going to put it on this wall here, but wherever I draw it, I want to make sure that I draw it actually on the floor. I don't want it to be floating on the wall. Like it shouldn't be like tilted on the back wall, but instead it should be drawn on the floor. And so what I'm going to do is, starting out, remember this line indicates where the floor and the wall comes together. So I'm going to start out drawing a horizontal line that shows where the base of that couch is going to exist. Again, it should not cross over to go up onto the wall. It could have been floating out in the middle of the room if I wanted. It didn't have to be here, but I went ahead and put it here. So we're going to do like a block letter L, because if I'm looking at the side of a couch, which is what I'm about to draw, then what I would see is something that looks kind of like an L. So again, we're starting out with just the basic shape. So now I'm using a vertical line to draw the back of the couch. And while I'm doing this, I'm kind of thinking about how large I should draw this couch in relationship to the door. I mean, think about that. Like if the door is like, let's say a 7-foot door, then, you know, the human that walks through it could be, I mean, they could be 7 feet, but they're probably more like, you know, around 6 feet or less. And so for most people, for general population, though there are some exceptional beings out there. So I'm thinking about this couch and like, okay, what would that look like for someone who's about 6 feet tall to sit in that couch? Would it make sense for them to also come through that doorway? It's important that you don't make like a little mini couch in this room for, you know, a giant. We're not drawing Alice in Wonderland here. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on with my block L. So I started with a regular L. To turn it into a block L, you're just going to kind of, I'm going to add on my horizontal lines here and add duplicate vertical lines. This is just a skeleton, guys. So this is a skeleton for what my couch will become. I'll have it end right about here. Wherever you cut off the line, that's where it's going to end. So I've got my L shape here. I'm going to go ahead and embrace the line that's inside of it. And my couch is now sitting against the wall right now. Like this is where it's going to exist. So now, I mean, this is like I drew my basic simple shape, and now I have to connect all of the corners that could be seen from the vanishing point. I have to connect them back to the vanishing point. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, but I'm not going to draw them the entire way. I'm going to place my ruler along the vanishing point, and then I'm going to draw just a little ways back because I realize that like my couch is not going to extend all the way back to the back wall. Just going to go a little bit of the distance. I'm using my pencil to create a pivot for my ruler as I am drawing the orthogonal lines. So I have created, and I'm going to go ahead and erase the floor where I know it's going to be covered up, but I have created a simple shape that is moving back to the vanishing point. I mean, again, this should be former knowledge. And now I just need to, I like to work from starting out with lines that from the top, I start out with the lines and then I just move in order of like which one attaches to which one, because that keeps things a little bit more coherent, I guess. So I'm going to start out with the top of my couch, and I'm going to lay my ruler along the top edge of the couch, and then I'm just going to raise the ruler up. whatever this angle is, I need to mirror that angle in the back. So I just drug the ruler so that I mirrored that angle, and that's where I cut off the couch. So I'm cutting off the thickness of the couch. Now I'm going to move to the next line that I drew of my basic shape, and I'm just going to drag the ruler again. It's simply a vertical line, but I'm going to drag it again to get to the back plane. I'm going to do the same thing here for the seat of the couch, just kind of drag it. This is another horizontal line, and if it doesn't quite meet my vanishing point lines, which it doesn't, I'll have to extend them. So I'm going to come back to my vanishing point line and just extend it so that I know what that should be. And then last, I'm going to come to this next line and just drag straight across from that next line to right here and connect them. And now I'm just going to erase out anything that I don't need, all the extras that I don't need. So what I have here is a couch that I've drawn in 1-point perspective. Now this doesn't look comfortable, and it's super basic, and it's definitely just, you know, the skeleton. Like, it is not how we're going to leave it. But here's where you can refer back to your design inspiration. You can start to think about what kind of couch you liked, because they're all going to have the same basic shape, kind of that L shape, and now I can add on to it. So for example, I can start rounding out corners. I can start making my couch look like a couch that I would much rather sit in. I can add cushions into my couch, both here and then moving forward using the same angle. I can kind of get a baseline for where I want those cushions to exist here. And I'm kind of freehanding at this point to make the cushions appear much more appealing and add on to this couch in general. I mean, everything would be much more comfortable if it was rounded out for sure, or would appear much more comfortable. So I'm just rounding out the edges. Maybe I add in like kind of an armrest here. So I would come and add in a little bit of an armrest that would make it a bit more comfortable as well. Maybe add some depth to the armrest. Could do that also. If it's really sketchy, that's totally fine. I would erase these lines. I don't need these lines anymore to show like the side of the couch. Maybe the couch takes on a lot more thickness. I do the same thing with having an armrest right here for this side of the couch, the back side. And now you're seeing, I mean, the couch is coming along. I can continue to add things. I could add like feet to the couch. I could add that onto the base if I wanted to do that, to give it a little bit more style in its appearance. There we go. So there's a little bit closer to a style of couch that you may want. You may want to shorten the armrest, make the cushions overlap a little bit more. All of those things are possible, just depending upon the type or the style of couch that you're wanting to draw. So you can look back at that. You can morph any of these contours that you would like to, but just knowing that general basic shape for things that exist in your room, that's going to be really helpful. So next we're going to move on to the ceiling. And when you are drawing in perspective, remember Captain Mark also told us that we would need to use, in order to make circles appear foreshortened, they would need to turn into ovals. They would need to be flattened and turn into ovals. So if we're doing recessed can lighting in our ceiling, then we would start out, the closer we are to the vanishing point, the smaller something's going to appear. So if I draw a can light here, it's going to be smaller, the oval will be smaller. If I draw it up here, it's getting further from the vanishing point. So that would make that oval bigger. So I'm gonna start out with a little oval here and an oval here. If you're trying to align them, have them aligned perfectly, you might want to draw just like a guideline, a horizontal guideline, to know where you want like the center of your oval to be. That might just help for your mapping. You can use guidelines all the time to help you do a better job drawing. And then the closer the can light, you know, the bigger that those ovals will be as they get closer to us. And that's going to help add to the illusion of depth. So again, anytime you're using a circle, really there should be no circles unless you have like a disco ball hanging from the ceiling. But otherwise there should be no circles. Everything should be drawn in perspective. So it should have like an oval to it. Unless there's some wall hanging or something, that could be a perfect circle for your back wall. But otherwise they would all be ovals. So now we're going to draw a plank or a wood floor. And so what you would need to do for the floor, if you choose to go this route, again, this is just giving ideas. You can certainly do your own thing. But I'm going to start out with a floor, and we are going to lay our ruler along the bottom edge. You will put a tick mark at every 1/2 inch. So I'm going to go through here. You can't really see the measurement on my ruler, but you'll want to put a tick mark at every 1/2 inch. Now, if you don't want to do this to your floor, then you certainly don't have to. And if you're not sure how to read a ruler yet, you can refer to the resources that I've provided for you on Schoology on how to read a ruler, how to determine 1/2 inches and inches. You could also go to the metric side and put a mark at every centimeter. That would be fine as well. This ruler is very hard to read in this lighting. It's lower light for this video, so I got pretty close. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this vanishing point like crazy. I am going to place my pencil along that vanishing point, and then I am going to just basically rotate my ruler right along that vanishing point. As another reminder, all of your tension should be in your ruler hand, like all of your strength should be in your ruler hand, and then just allow your pencil to just slide along. So I'm not going to do the entire floor. I'm going to do some of the floor, and I'm going to allow you to finish on your own. You can even pause if you want. And then over here, like my floor actually extends over here, so I'm going to add like a similar measurement over here on the sides as well until my floor ends, because underneath my couch there should be floor too. So to not make it confusing, I'm going to go ahead and add in. I'm still using that vanishing point. That's totally fine that I do that. I should do that. And now you can see it goes all the way over to the edge. I'm going to take it just a little bit further. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you watch this entire thing as I create the entire floor. I'm using that vanishing point along the back wall. And these stripes create kind of like a slatted floor. So again, here's my orthogonals. And then when I want to start making like a plank floor to show like a wood or a plank floor, I need to use horizontal lines as places where the boards will end. So I'm going to go like, I'm going to stagger it, like every couple of boards is going to have a line in the same spot. But then as I move down, I'll move down a little ways. Other boards will have marks to show where they end. So they shouldn't all be placed at the same spot. So I'm just kind of staggering those, slide my ruler down, staggering those lines so that there's different endpoints for them. And this is how you create a plank floor or a wood floor in 1-point perspective. Now I guess I should come up here a little ways. There we go, finish off those planks. There we go. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of how the floor can be created. Let's see, is there anything else that I want to show you right now? I'm going to show you a window really quickly. So the window is handled very similar to the door. We'll put a window actually over here on this wall because it wouldn't make sense to have it on an interior wall. I'll put it right behind this couch. And I'm going to start out again, just like I did with the doorway. I'm going to start out with the overall height of my window. And since I'm going to have my window kind of high, and maybe it'll come pretty close to the bottom of the, or the top of the couch. I'm starting out with that line. I'm going, that vertical line. And now I'm going to figure out how wide I want my window to be by attaching it to the vanishing point. Go. I'm going to do that again over here. And then I'm going to use another vertical, the exact same vertical that I used here. I'm just going to slide straight over and figure out where I'm going to cut off the window. And I decided to cut off right about there. Erase the parts I don't need. Next, in order to make it appear as though it's sitting back in space, I'm going to use those tiny little horizontal lines to show the thickness of the window. It should be about the same thickness. And then I am going to attach or connect those ends for where those little lines ended. And then I have two tiny planes. I have one on top and one on bottom that would also see the vanishing point. So I'm going to align my vanishing point with this corner, this top corner of the depth or thickness of the window, and I'm going to draw to attach and create the top plane, what I would see of the top plane from my perspective. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing for the bottom plane. So I've created a window, and of course I can add to it. Again, a bare bones window. I can add on to it. I can add all kinds of things. If I want to add curtains or some sort of material, then I would definitely draw them bigger in front and then smaller as it gets back by toward the vanishing point. So back here I would draw them much smaller, but I could have them, I could draw a curtain rod up here on top if I wanted to. I'll go ahead and do that really quickly. Pivot for the thickness. Maybe on the end of the curtain rod, I'm going to make it a vertical, because again, anytime I'm doing any angles, they should all be vertical, horizontal, or they should be orthogonal. So I'm going to show where that curtain rod ends, and it should be vertical, and I'll just put some sort of like ornamentation on the end of it so that we can see that. And then maybe I started drawing my curtains, but I'm going to go ahead and erase those, and I'm going to redo them. So let's say I just kind of wanted like a half curtain to kind of come down over the top of my window. Then I could have it hanging down this way. Maybe it comes up on top a little bit too, because you can see a little bit of the fabric. And it just kind of halfway covers everything. And once I do that, then I would actually erase out all my hard work from the window. Because remember, perspective is giving me a structure to draw things dimensionally. I could also erase my hard work on my curtain rod, because if you don't see the curtain rod, you just see the curtain, then it would be hanging over the window in this way. Clean up my window, make it look a little nicer, erasing out the marks I don't need. Okay, I can still see the depth of the window here. Maybe I choose to create a vase for a plant on the windowsill. I could do that. I could add trim work or molding around the edges. Of course, anything that has straight lines, I would want to make sure that I use the ruler to really clean it up. I'm just sketching it for you now. But the plant would count as an extra, so maybe I would add on some sort of plants here, using, again, what I've taught you about creating cone shapes or cylinder shapes, those curved ovals on the top and the bottom. And then erasing out where you can see through. Okay. All right, so that's adding in a few of the extras. I think now you're probably starting to get the picture. Anything that you would put along your back wall, that's totally fine, but it's going to be flat unless it has dimension. Like for example, if you choose to place like a table along this back wall, let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to start out with where my table would come in space. So maybe it would come out this far here. So I'm going to place where the table legs would be, knowing the table legs are not going to be drawn on the back wall, because again, it's not going to be floating. I'm also going to draw the height of the table, and I think this is just going to be like a little like decorative table. So I'm going to go ahead and draw the surface of the table, like the tabletop. So this is where the legs are going to be from here to here, and this is the tabletop. So I'm going to go ahead and draw the thickness of the tabletop. But the thickness is, I'm going to know how thick that should be based on how far my legs are from. So like, let me go ahead and show you. If I draw this shape here, what this shows me is like where my table legs would be for my table. So I know that my tabletop has to have that same amount of depth to it. So I'll show you. So that would be about a little more than a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to place my ruler just to kind of give you an idea. I mean, usually I wouldn't measure, but I would just kind of eyeball it. But I'm going to make it about a little more than a 1/2 inch as it moves back in space. Same thing here, a little more than a 1/2 inch, placing my ruler at the 1/2 inch mark. I'm going to go a little, oh, make sure I'm aligned with that vanishing point. There we go. Keep yourself in check that way. That's a really good practice to keep in mind. So this lets me know how thick my table needs to be in space, like how much I need to draw when I'm drawing on that back wall. The back wall's a little different. It still uses the orthogonal lines, but the spatially, it just feels different. Now I'm going to use verticals. Actually, nope. Now I'm going to create the thickness of the table. If I was looking at the end of a table, I would be using vertical lines to create the overall thickness, like that lip of the table, like the thickness of the wood or whatever the table is made out of, plastic or whatever it might be. And then I would be able to connect this corner as well to the vanishing point. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for that part. Even though it's a little sliver, we're going to go ahead and do that. And then I am going to draw legs by using vertical lines. So the legs are also going to have depth and dimension. And I've kind of already drawn this shape, so I know where the legs are going to exist. Now I can have it be a tray if I want. I'm going to need this back leg too. Right now it kind of looks like a tray, like very IKEA with the design here. If I choose to do that though, I'm going to give it some depth and thickness on the base. There's just a sliver of that showing, maybe not really. So I'm going to have some thickness, and maybe I would like even put it on wheels there. And I'm just kind of like taking you guys through the process. Feel free to stop this at any time or to move forward, but this way it gives you a little bit of practice. Yeah, that is a tricky angle right there, but you will probably run into it too. So as I'm just building on, I was like, oh, that kind of looks like a tray. So why not just like keep it as a two-tiered table here. So now I'm going to add on to the legs. I'm going to actually draw the legs. They would have thickness as well. They wouldn't be completely wiry and just a line. So I'm just creating a twin line for every one of my verticals. And then I'm going to erase out any lines that go over the top of it. Like here and here, and then I would do that for the back ones as well. They're a little bit thinner because they're off in the distance. That makes them smaller. I would erase where the floor is so that it appears as though I have an actual, and I can kind of eyeball or hand fix some of these things by hand. And now I have a table that sits along the back wall and also has depth. So it's still moving back in space. You can definitely see it from this top plane. Let's say that I turned this into some sort of desk or something back here in the background. Then I could also add, details such as a cup for holding pens, or maybe I had, if I wanted to have somebody like drawing back here, I could create that shape of a flat paper. I'm going to draw the line for where it would exist. I'm going to connect it to the orthogonal, or use orthogonal lines connecting to the vanishing point for the thickness of that page. And then I'm just going to mirror my horizontal line up here again. Okay, let's see. We've got a window, we've got a door, we've got a floor, a couch, anything that's drawn on this back wall. So if I choose to add a poster or something, maybe it's hung at an angle, it is going to be completely flat. If it is a two-dimensional thing that is hung on the back wall, you just want to maybe kind of watch your angles, make sure that it's drawn well. Anything with straight sides should not be free form. It should be, I'm just going to mirror that angle. Anything with straight sides should definitely be drawn with the ruler to keep it looking great. Maybe I have some person back here that's, on the, their head or something. I don't know. This lovely person. Yay! That's the kind of poster you want in your room, right? But you get the idea. Whatever